I'm Scott L. Miller. It's the 3rd of October, 2022, and this is my vlog of daily life in Nicaragua. Welcome to the show. It is Monday. Tomorrow is my 19th wedding anniversary. So tomorrow, Dominica and I are going out to dinner. We're not traveling as we normally do for our wedding anniversary or do something big because we're waiting until next week because we have to take the kids to Costa Rica for our border run. So because we have to do the border run, we are combining that trip with just a trip to Costa Rica because it's another country, right? Like that. It's funny living in this region that simple things like, well, we got to run a few hours on the bus down to San Jose. That's going to another country. It gives us a completely different set of restaurants, a different set of things to do. So we're trying to come up with things we want to do with the kids, but Dominica got us a hotel in downtown San Jose, or near downtown, that is close to the Museo de Oro, which is the pre-Columbian gold museum. I'm very interested. I've heard so many good things about this, and my kids are like, yeah, that sounds interesting to me. And then they talk to Dominica, and they're like, yeah, so I think we have to go to that. Dad really wants to go. So they're going for me. They're putting on a brave face, but I really want to see that museum. It's supposed to be one of the best in Central America. It's a historic and art, and a very different take on things because it's all pre-Columbian gold work. I feel like I'm standing in an anthill, and I am. That's why I'm itchy. Okay, hold on. We're getting all the ants off my legs now. I don't normally have that problem here. I'm going to move. There's concrete right here. Why am I standing on dirt? That's not smart, Scott. Anyway, one of the things here in Nicaragua, we don't have fire ants. So coming from Texas, we're used to ants being a really major problem. Like they can really, really hurt you if you're not careful. Here, you mostly just end up with ants climbing on you. They don't so much bite as just, you feel them moving around. Here we get some really big ones, like that one that was just on my toe. And they really don't bite. And we also get leaf cutters. And one of these days, I'm gonna do a little shot of leaf cutter ants. I'm just gonna go around and find a bunch because they're everywhere. And they're, you know, it takes a little bit of effort to film them, and I don't normally have the right kind of camera. The GoPro is not gonna get that, right? Because it barely gets me, and it's like wide angle, but I'll bring out the Olympus and get down close and see if I can get some of the leaf cutters, because they're super interesting to watch. Like they're so common, but they're not something we have back where I'm from in the States. So today's Monday, mostly work. My only big thing was this evening we did a whole bunch of more binging of Stranger Things with the girls, and we are now well into season 3. We completed season 2 first thing tonight and moved on to season 3, and which is a good one. Season 2 is my least favorite of the 4 seasons so far. All right. Beyond that, that was our stuff at home. Nothing big. And and I made salmon burgers for the girls for dinner. There you go. All right. I have a question that I'm going to be answering today. This is great. I love getting questions that I can answer on the show because I don't always have a topic, and this makes it a lot easier for me. I can just be like, oh, there's a question. I'm going to walk out, go to the Parque Galicia, where I am right now, and I'm going to do this. So this is the question that was sent to me on YouTube. We'll be coming in from Canada, but I'm sure the process is similar. My questions are like, what do we need about taxes in our home country? Do we need a Nicaraguan bank account? How do we find a decent place to live? What do we need to do to bring our cats with us, etc.? All right, I'm going to do my best to try to address these. So let's start with taxes in your home country. Now, I'm not a tax attorney, so definitely speak to a CPA or whatever in your country, but generally, nearly all countries do not tax their residents when their residents are not resident. That may sound obvious, but that's how it works. When you leave a country, you don't get taxed. Every country has a slightly different process for that. Do you leave for vacation and not get taxed while you're on vacation? Typically you do, so there's normally some process by which you are not resident in your country and not paying taxes. It depends exactly where you're coming from. As far as I know, Canada is like that. If you live outside Canada, you do not pay any income tax in Canada. You may, in some countries, need to report that you're not in the country. Like there may be some paperwork for registering that you're not there, but you don't have to pay taxes. And basically everywhere works that way, with one really noticeable exception. That is the United States. So the US is famous world over for taxing American citizens abroad, regardless of where they're earning income, how they're earning income, where they live. It doesn't matter. You can have never set foot in the United States, have no social security number, no ability to get into the US, be banned entry, and if they find out that your parents were American and they can grant you citizenship, they will tax you abroad on income you've earned over a lifetime somewhere else with using no American resources, no American job, not even necessarily a known right to entry into the US. It's that extreme. That doesn't really ever happen, but it can. That's how the system works. So as an American, right now, there is no ability to renounce your citizenship. That's not something they're offering right now. And it's always difficult, even when they do offer it. But right now, that has been shut down during COVID, and I've heard nothing of it being restarted. So be aware that this means if you're an American, you owe American taxes, period. There is no way around that. Now, what does that mean, though? For Americans, your taxes can change when you live abroad. If you truly live abroad, you can decrease your taxes. You have a tax credit of roughly $104,900 per year that you can claim as a credit and say, well, I'm not in the country, I don't live there, I'm not resident in the United States, therefore I'm reduced by this amount. I only need to pay taxes past that other than some basic taxes, and you don't need to have health care and things like that for that. Again, it's a little bit complex and more than I can go on to on a show like this. If I'm going to do this, I have to have the tax forms in front of me and basically read you the tax form. But people will say, no, that doesn't really work that way. It does. Most people are unwilling to be truly resident outside the United States for the required amount of time. And so they simply say that it doesn't exist because they're not looking to actually be residents somewhere else. If you are truly looking to be a resident outside the United States, people like us who actually live outside the US in every legitimate way, we qualify and in theory do not have to pay taxes on our first very large amount of income. And when you consider you're not paying taxes on that large income and you're living in a country that costs a lot less, that money goes really far. That's a lot of money. And then when you start paying taxes, it's only on the amount above that. It's not people who make more than that pay taxes on all of it. It's that anyone who earns more than that pays only taxes starting above that. So if you make $110,000 a year working from the US abroad, and you're truly abroad, truly resident abroad, then you only pay taxes on $5,000, which is not very bad. Still more than you'd like to pay, but not very much in the grand scheme of things. What it takes to be abroad means you have to be claimed by another country for residency 335 days, or in a normal year, 336 in a leap year. You get only 30 days that another country cannot claim you for the entire 24-hour period. That is a complex way of saying that you're outside the US all that time, because it's not actually what it's saying, and people get confused by that. It's not about the US versus not the US. It is about being somewhere else. Now, if I'm in Nicaragua for 12 hours and I'm in Honduras for 12 hours, it's a land border, and at no moment am I not in one or the other. You may not be able to determine exactly at what moment I switch from one to the other. That's okay. But as long as my Nicaragua existence is transferred directly in a passport stamped to Honduras at a border, no problem. They can claim me as long as a 24-hour period has me in one of those countries. I'm good. That's a day in which I'm claimed by another or multiple non-US entities. If during that day I was to travel outside of the boundaries of those countries to, say, international waters, there would be a moment that neither of those countries could claim me. I'm not in Nicaragua, I'm not in Honduras, I'm simply in international waters. If that happens, that is a day technically that you cannot say that you had someone claiming you for the entire day. Very hard to prove if you drifted out in a canoe, right? The US is not putting satellite trackers on you to see if they believed you went into international waters for a blip. But if you are traveling, say, from Honduras to England, right, you're going to be over international waters for a significant period of time. That flight will potentially be registered as you being outside of a jurisdiction, any jurisdiction, and therefore you owe taxes to the United States for that day if you don't have enough days otherwise claimed. Any day that you set foot in the United States for 1 millisecond, that day is a claimed day by the United States. So you have to have a maximum of 30 days in which you have either touched the United States or not been 100% claimed by a foreign country. I guess you could distill that to just the second statement, in order to qualify for that thing from the United States. If you're in the United States more than 30 days, or it's difficult. If you like live on a boat, sorry, if you're in international waters for a significant portion of your year, the U.S. is going to say you owe full taxes. It's just how it is. You're not somewhere else. And there's lots of assumptions behind this. It's actually relatively logical. I really wish the United States would up that number from 30 to 40, but I realize that's a 30% increase. Like, that's non-trivial. But I feel that it's, and one of the reasons that they choose 30 days is because 30 days gives you enough time to do what you need to do in the United States in almost all cases purely as a cause of you being a citizen, but no extra time. And so if your plan is, well, I'm going to be in the US part of the time, I'm going to be somewhere else part of the time, and I don't want to pay taxes, but I'm really going to leverage being an American and living in the US, no, sorry, you're going to pay taxes. But if it's, I just got to go in and see my family, I just have to celebrate Christmas, I just have to go get this paperwork filed because my business is there, and I have to do it because the US has created a situation where I have to, they're going to be like, okay, we understand, you get 30 days, that's enough to do just about anything. Just plan well, right? Don't be lazy, don't be stupid, you'll be able to do it. Missing it is only a tax penalty, but it's a significant one for most people. So that's how the US works. Other countries, essentially universally, you just don't have to pay taxes anymore. That is a thing that you get to give up. It is wonderful. So yeah, so if you're coming from Canada, double check, but you should be looking at living a tax-free lifestyle, even if you are coming from, even if you're still working in Canada, right? That income coming into Nicaragua will not be a problem. Also, very important to note, for those who aren't aware, Nicaragua does not tax your income. Whether it's coming from the US, Canada, whether they're taxing it or not, whether you're getting foreign income from China, man, all the bugs are just hopping onto my toes. None of that is taxed. Nicaragua only taxes income made by working in Nicaragua, meaning working as a worker in Nicaragua. Working online for a job somewhere else is not working in Nicaragua to Nicaragua, right? So if you're working for a company in Nicaragua that's registered in Nicaragua and you're an employee of that company, you pay taxes, or they do, or you both do. But if you work in any way, a job, work remote, digital nomad, or anything like that, Nicaragua treats you as tax-free. Really quickly, why would they do this? This seems crazy, right? Isn't Nicaragua a heavy tax country? It is not. It's a medium tax country, first of all, but it is generally considered slightly more tax heavy than, say, the US or Canada. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what's generally considered. And I'm only saying I don't know if it's true because I haven't looked into it, not because I have an opinion. What, because it doesn't affect me, I don't pay taxes here. The reason that Nicaragua would allow expats and digital nomads and so forth to forego paying local taxes is actually a really logical reason, and many countries work this way, but certainly not all. The reason is, if you're getting foreign income, that means that that money is coming into Nicaragua with Nicaragua having to do nothing. Basically, the only investment that Nicaragua is going to make is allowing you to exist and not charging you taxes. And they know that while maybe some of that money you stash away in a bank account, a vast amount of it, most, large portion, whatever, is going to be spent on food, services, housing, products, and other things that generate money for the economy. And even if those things themselves don't earn taxes, right, they pay for things that do pay taxes, and eventually that money will get into the system. So it's a great way of making the economy larger here, and making it very attractive for people to come work here. So it makes total sense. Nicaragua is not in a position where they want to discourage people coming in and working. They are not in a position where they want to discourage people feeding into the economy. Pretty much no one is in that position, but they really want to encourage it. So rather than trying to tax you, which would drive you into a neighboring country, if you suddenly wanted to tax me 25%, 30% on my income earned somewhere else, first of all, that may not be something I'm capable of paying due to the amount of tax that could add up to, right? Because you don't know how many jurisdictions are going to try something like that. You may end up having to owe more money than you could earn. I guarantee that exists somewhere in the universe. But it would drive nearly everyone who has any kind of income, the most beneficial people to the country, it would drive them to Honduras, to El Salvador, to Guatemala, to Panama, to Mexico, to other countries that are not going to tax and are going to make it very attractive for you to come work that tax difference would be all that it takes. It would be both a ton of money. It would also be a lot of effort. All things you would not be looking for. Nicaragua's not dumb. They know that their best benefit comes from you having a foreign job. This is what they want most. And I've talked about this in other episodes. They're going to do anything they can to encourage you to live in Nicaragua, be a good resident, spend lots of money on food and services and events and fun things and things that you will leave behind. Maybe you'll stay forever. Maybe they don't care, right? Stay for a little bit, stay for a long time. Digital nomads, permanent residents, they're all welcome. And the thing that they want is for you to have a foreign income, and they're happy not to tax it. Because if you make $50,000 remote, let's say you make $100,000 remotely, you're making $100,000 in Canada, you move here, even if you only spend half of that, that's $50,000 going in directly, just pouring into the Nicaraguan economy that didn't exist before. It's not like a local who's making money in Nicaragua and spending $50,000 in Nicaragua. Yes, they're putting $50,000 in, but all that money came from the economy. It's the economy going around in a circle, which is still good. That still moves the wheels. That still gets things built and puts food on tables and gets houses built and all that stuff. But it is nowhere near the value of $50,000 coming from the outside and adding to the economy with no additional mouths to feed, no additional things to take care of. The government doesn't have to provide any real amount of additional resources in order to service that growth of $50,000. And once it comes in, it doesn't go back out again, not easily and not through that mechanism. So it becomes a funnel for bringing economic growth into the country. And this is true in most countries, but a lot of countries tax you and make it not very attractive. And countries like the United States have really large economies already, and they don't see it as a giant benefit because it's a very small number of people and it's a very small percentage of the overall economy. But here in Nicaragua, it is a lot of people and an extremely large percentage of the overall economy. So it's a big deal. The next part, do we need a Nicaraguan bank account? Well, this is a complicated one. It depends really what you want to do. For most intents and purposes, certainly if you're a short-term resident or coming in to try the country for a little while, you do not need a bank account. To be clear, I have been here on and off for 7 years. I've been here continuously for coming up on 2 years. I do an awful lot here in country, from having houses and properties and in the process of buying a car and all kinds of things. Do not have a bank account myself. Do I want one? Yes, I plan on getting one. That will happen, but I do not need one. Now, at some point, my company got a bank account and some things are done through that. So yeah, I'm kind of in a middle ground. I don't absolutely need one. Sorry for the shadows here. It's a little bit, I was not expecting it to be so harsh. It is such a gorgeous day today. I walked out the door, out of my office. I was actually a little bit cold, I realize now, in my office. I stepped outside and the warmth was so comfortable. I just basking in this beautiful sunlight. It's not too hot, but it's got like that comfortable, makes your joints warmth without being oppressively hot. It's perfect today, and it's early October, so we've taken that edge off of the summer heat. Our variations here are tiny, but the summer is just enough warmer, and with the rains you get that humidity, and you notice. I'm gonna turn the camera around real quickly because I'm hoping you guys can see these clouds up here. I hope that this kind of resolves. It's difficult on the GoPro, but that between the trees, those clouds, that's out over the ocean. That's the way I'm facing, so those are the clouds over the Pacific, and it is just fantastically beautiful in the sky today. All right, so you don't need a bank account. You can easily make do. What people generally do is you'll keep a bank account in Canada or get a Swiss bank account. Believe it or not, a number of people do that. Charles Schwab, very popular for that. But find a travel debit and credit card. Make sure you have, and multiple if you can. Make sure you have the wherewithal to be able to put money into your accounts in Canada or wherever. Make sure that you have cards that are not going to penalize you for taking money out or spending money down here. For me, I have a Chase Sapphire credit card, and my credit union from New York has no international fees. And so if I'm using ATMs down here, yes, I have to pay the local ATM fee. Sometimes you can even get those waived, but generally you're going to pay those. And so I can get cash. No problem whatsoever. It's the same as being back home in the US for me, that I pay just the ATM fee for the local ATM. I have no fees whatsoever from my bank. I have no fees for making exchanges between currencies. So I take out Cordoba and do everything I do in local currency from the ATMs here, but you can get US currency as well. If you're coming from Canada, everything's a transfer for you, so it doesn't make any sense. But I'm able to do whatever I need here, and there's no penalties. And when I pay with a credit card, I can pay with my Chase Sapphire and pay, which is a Visa, and pay Cordoba or dollars with no penalties. You get the better exchange rates when you pay in Cordoba, so always do that. Just make sure you have the right things, but that's it. And so with that, I have really great access to funds in multiple ways and access to credit. No need for a local bank account whatsoever. Is it handy to have a local bank account for some things, especially because you can do bank-to-bank payments? Yes, of course. There are reasons you may want to have a local bank account. If you're going to do lots of business here in town or anywhere in the country, you easily will want to have a bank account. So consider that it's something you may want to have. Lafisa has been a really good bank for us. BAC is really popular. Banpro is in the area. There's about 4 or 5 major banks that you can work with. You have options. A lot of people have multiple accounts. A lot of people have none. A lot of locals have no bank accounts. Keep that in mind. That's how much you don't need a bank account. It's common not to have one, but it is really handy. And if you have a local bank account, a Cordoba account and a dollar account are different accounts. You can't mix currencies in any bank account, but normally you don't have the option. Here you actually have a multi-currency system, and so be aware that you're going to have to choose any given bank account how you're going to want to operate, but Cordoba is the way to go. If you're going to have a business here, the business will want to have an account for sure. So I think that answers that. But definitely, if you're going to get an account, don't worry. It's not an upfront thing. It's not an early thing. You can do that over time. How do we find a decent place to live? This is difficult, right? And this is the question that keeps coming up, and I hope a lot of the videos this week have answered some of this. The best way is to come down, stay in a hotel or whatever, and from there, get to know some locals, get to know some areas, figure out exactly where you want to be, and rent a place from there. You're still going to have some challenges, but that's going to give you the ability to have a lot of useful input to the process. So I heavily recommend that. But not everyone can do that. And there's certainly a cost advantage to coming down and having a place ready for you, more or less. To do that, I think you're going to need a service. Now, the best thing is if you have friends here in country, they can help you, and this is not hard. Ask them to look around, get some idea of where you want to be. And they'll still probably talk to agencies in many cases, but they'll only be talking to the representatives of the seller or the renter or whatever. They will not be buyer's agents. You won't have to pay a fee or anything for that. I mean, take care of your friend, of course, who's helping you out. That's the best way. That's what I would recommend, and that's really not very hard. Staying in hostels or even hotels here long term, it's really easy. And Airbnbs and all that stuff. And often you can find them at really good prices so that it's not a big deal to stay for a long term. And I know I've got lots of viewers who come down and stay in hostels or even stay in fancy hotels because it's so cheap per night. It's not that big of a deal. But if that does prove to be too expensive, then you may need to do something to move that process along faster. And of course, that's one of the things that we're trying to do because we know that that's a gap in the market. Like, how do you deal with that? And we're trying to provide a service where, again, your own people are going to be best. They're going to know you. They're going to be able to go around and casually do stuff. But Marcella, that you've seen on the show a number of times, if you go back to the episode about 2 weeks ago where we were at La Avenida and Frank showed up and we kind of had a surprise thing, and she is helping with real estate stuff here in the country, not as an agent, not as a broker, nothing like that, just going around, getting phone numbers, making calls, getting prices, and allowing you to talk directly. If you have to, something like that will work, but that's very much non-ideal. The best thing is if you come down, and for rentals, you really can talk to people directly. We have an agent, if you're looking here in Leon, we know a local agency who's really good, and again, it's all locals, very different, and you just talk to the seller's agents and that's it. They'll show you what there is available. They don't listen to them for anything. They're just showing you places, right? So it's not their opinion, just whatever prices you can work out, and that's it. for rentals, it's relatively easy in the grand scheme. And you can see on my videos from just the last couple of days, I showed a couple of the bigger houses in the area. I'm hoping pretty soon to do some rentals that are really, really inexpensive, and we're going to need to find some that are in the middle as well, of course. And it's something I want to do a lot of, right? I love looking at places, so I want to do a lot of it and show you guys, so you have like these options of, oh, that's what that would cost. Nice. Okay, now I know what to work from. I like to look at that place. It was this price, so I can find one of those. For example, I just showed some that were at prices at $350, $600, and $800, so you can look at those and get a feel for what different areas or types of houses should cost or whatever. And here you're typically, in almost all of Nicaragua, your rentals are going to be houses. There is very little apartment living. It exists, but it is rare, and where it does exist tends to be Managua. A little bit in Esteli, a little bit in Matagalpa, but it's the more urban, more modern cities. Here in the colonial cities, for sure, apartments are not so much a thing. They exist, I'm not saying they don't, but their percentage of the market is much lower than it is what you're used to, and it tends to be for locals. It does not tend to be fancy apartments like most expats are going to be looking for. And I don't mean fancy, but fancier than what they normally do. And the last question there was, what do we need to do to bring our cat with us? This is hard, but the hardest thing is really, how are you going to get them here? And cats are far easier than dogs. Typically a cat can be crated or whatever, put into a carrier and taken on an airplane. If so, you're probably in good shape. I had to do a private plane to get my dogs here, but that was because of my dogs, not because of Nicaragua. And it was only 2 hours because we flew out of Miami. I drove them to Miami, put them on a private plane, 2 hours, 5 minutes, we were in Managua, and things were pretty easy. You need to have a bit of paperwork. You need all of your international travel documents handled by a vet in the United States. All of your ducks in a row. You need lots of paperwork. I will try to get that written down for you as to what is needed. And you're going to want to have a vet or two in the United States that is on call, knows your pets, knows their records, has copies of their records, and can speak to the government or to a vet here just in case. You also ideally want to have a vet here, although that is not required at all. Honduras, it is. But in Nicaragua, it is not. So you just have to have all your paperwork. And for us, that's all we needed. We came through the airport 100% ready to go. No issues. Just have all your, here's all our rabies certificates. Here's all of our health history. Here's all the information like that. And it was really, really easy. The flight is the only part that was complex. It is good to have resources here. Again, my team does have vets here on the ground. We are actually, my main company is actually a veterinary consulting company. It's a big piece of what we do. And so we provide vet services and other things, technical services and phone systems and stuff to vets in conjunction with Alan. So if you see Alan on the show, he specializes in vets. That's his jam, right? I just end up working a lot with vets. He's the vet guy. He's like Lord of Vet Services. So we have a huge amount of vet services here in country, but we actually have vets themselves. So if you get into a situation where you're stuck for some reason, get on really quick and chat with me on YouTube. We'll find you a vet in Managua that can help at the airport or whatever. Because I mean, it's very rare that that would ever be needed, but I don't want anyone having a problem with an animal if we could in some way help with it. So certainly, but having a vet here that you know and has the paperwork and is like, oh yeah, I know I'm ready for this animal, just has that extra layer of if anything goes wrong, you can have them call or whatever. So but that's about it. That's actually pretty simple. It's just about having all the paperwork and stuff. And again, I'll link that below. So those are the questions. I hope that that is really helpful. Honestly, moving to Nicaragua is not that hard, especially coming from the US and Canada. You get 90 days immediately upon arrival. It's easy to extend. You can always go over to Costa Rica and reset. It's you need to have your passports, obviously. Flights can come into Managua. If you're bringing a pet, I would do the flight into Managua. I would honestly try to wait until someone other than Avianca is flying into Managua, because I would not trust having my pet on Avianca. If they're with you all the time, and if anything goes wrong at the airport, you're just going back to your hotel in Miami, okay. But if you're doing anything else, I'd be really, really scared of them having my pet. They are incompetent and honestly quite dishonest. And they will cancel your flights and things that are very bad for a pet. You want that flight to go smoothly as much as possible. United is supposed to be coming back in November. That's next month. Spirit is supposed to be coming back in November next month. American is supposed to be coming back next year. I may have one of those reversed, but we're supposed to have a number of flight paths open again from the United States, and similarly probably from Canada, but most likely you'll go from Canada to the US, US to Nicaragua. And once that happens, you'll be in that much better shape. But you can fly in on Aeromexico, you can fly in on Copa through PTY, which is Panama City. So there's options. But if you fly into Costa Rica, you're going to need to deal with, and I don't have any of this info, you're going to have to deal with having your animals import into Costa Rica and then transferring them over the border into Nicaragua. That's probably not a huge deal, but it is more complication. And I often recommend flying into Liberia, Costa Rica as one of the better airports for Nicaragua. But if you have pets, that's a time I would change that recommendation. Do a direct flight to Managua, make your life easier. And maybe not direct, you may have to hop through Mexico City or whatever, but all with one airlines, never let your animal out of your possession. Beyond that, coming to Nicaragua is very easy. It's a simple system, it's welcoming, it's safe. I really like, especially if you're flying into Managua, get a hotel at the Best Western, a room at the Best Western across the street. It's walking distance, you don't need a taxi. Lug your stuff if you need to, get a porter if you want. $5 later, you're at the Best Western, you're checked into a room, you can get food there. You're not in a part of the city where you want to go out and do anything, not a big deal because you just want to nap, decompress, get ready, and when the sun comes up, get breakfast in your hotel, be energized, and then head to wherever it is you're going. Across town in Managua, maybe if you're doing that, you want to just go. Heading out to Granada, heading down to San Juan del Sur, coming out here to Leon, whatever, deal with that. Give yourself enough gap that if your flight is delayed, if things go wrong with customs or whatever, you have plenty of time and you're not panicked because you're just walking across the street to a hotel room. Your life is easy. And if you need to split up your party, you're having problems with customs, one person can take your cat and go over to the hotel. I don't know that the hotel takes pets, so bear with me on there. I don't know. The other one can stay and deal with customs. You can come back and forth, all kinds of flexibility that otherwise you wouldn't have. So I recommend that a lot. Try to bring everything you can in luggage. I recommend against shipping things as much as possible. We came with like 11 pieces of luggage, and honestly, it's been enough. Do we wish we had a little bit more? Of course, but it's not a big deal. Learning to live very simply and reducing the amount of things we own has worked really, really well. And yeah, I think that's about it. I hope I answered your questions. Please remember to like, subscribe, comments below, ask more questions. What do I need to clarify on this stuff? What more do you want to know? And if you would like to support the channel, you can go down, find a link, buy me a coffee. Otherwise, I will see all of you for my 19th wedding anniversary tomorrow.